So we have another bombshell ruling. This time is from the International Trade Court. They have blocked President Trump's tariffs. Dan Bongino speaks out and slams James Comey. And a new poll from CNN shows that America is actually on the side of President Trump.
This morning, a major blow to President Trump in his trade war against the world. A federal court is now blocking most of his sweeping tariffs on dozens of America's trading partners. The three-judge panel of a court that, let's be honest, most people have not really heard of, found his tariffs, quote, exceed any authority granted, declaring most of his tariffs were imposed illegally. The administration immediately filed plans to appeal the decision, setting up a showdown that could go all the way to the Supreme Court. But this ruling in and of itself is significant, halting Trump's 30% tariffs on goods from China, the 25% on Canada and Mexico, and the 10% across the board universal tariffs that he slapped on most goods from so many other countries. We're keeping an eye on how the markets are reacting to the ruling. As you can see, market futures, stock futures jumping this morning ahead of the opening bell.
So this is no question frustrating news. But the interesting thing about this decision from this U.S. Court of International Trade, this happens to be the one ruling out of all that we've seen up to this point that makes 0 sense. The president clearly has the authority that was given to him by Congress. And so the White House did file a notice of appeal this morning immediately in response to this announcement. And quite frankly, this continues to show that the appearance of the judicial system has been organized to rebuke everything that the president is doing. Now, whether that is actually happening, whether people are colluding, that's all speculation, of course. But I mean, just on the surface, when you see that this ruling came out, I mean, it's baffling. Now, let's hear more details on this.
Last night, the Manhattan-based Court of International Trade, made up of a panel of 3 judges appointed by Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, and Trump himself, unanimously agreeing that the president exceeded his authority by claiming America's longstanding trade deficit was a national emergency, giving him tariff powers that are normally left to Congress. The White House is now being given 10 days to complete the formal process of stopping Trump's tariffs. However, shortly after the decision was handed down, lawyers for the Trump administration notifying the court they will be appealing it. Analysts at Goldman Sachs say the White House still has a few tools at its disposal that could ensure the court ruling is only temporary, pointing to Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, which would allow the administration to quickly replace the 10% across-the-board tariffs with a similar tariff up to 15%, that under Section 122.
Now, there's a couple of things about this ruling that doesn't pass the common sense test to me. 12 total states and small businesses sued the Trump administration, claiming that these tariffs are raising costs and disrupting supply chains. Now, my question is, to what degree? In the same degree that COVID disrupted supply chains? I think that's a worthy question they need to answer. But more importantly, the court is saying that the 10% baseline on most imports and higher rates on goods from countries like China and the EU are not justified by a national emergency.
Every time President Trump has tried to defend America, we've had judicial overreach. And if you actually look, there's precedent in 1971 where you had Richard Nixon doing the same thing against the Japanese, a 10% tariff, and he imposed it. There was no pushback. So what President Trump has to do is go through the courts again, go to the Supreme Court. But these tariffs are here to stay. So anything that the stocks are reflecting, it's clearly going to be wrong today. I think people need to hold their purses and actually understand that President Trump has the authority to do this. You look at manufacturing deficits today. When you look at the trade deficit, it's $971 billion. So we have a national emergency. We have an economic emergency. And what I'm seeing today is judicial overreach of presidential authority. This is exactly what the president is in charge to do. He's the commander of chief. He should be setting trade policy.
Yeah. At this rate, he might as well just become a district court judge, you know? Now, before we go any further, please, if you guys have been getting value from our channel and this video in particular, like, share, and subscribe right now. And also, if you want to support us further, in the link in the description below, you can buy us a cup of coffee. And don't forget, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So we know exactly what the right is saying in this entire situation. We know exactly how the White House feels. But what about people on the left, especially the people who brought this lawsuit to begin with? Well, the Attorney General from Arizona, Democrat, Here's what she had to say.
Attorney General Mace, thank you for joining us on such short notice. This all just happened in the last couple of hours, as you well know. Let me just start, because I think we're all trying to digest this, and people at home are wondering what this exactly means. It's our understanding that this ruling applies to all tariffs except for the ones imposed on steel and aluminum. First, is that right? And can you just give us the scope of the impact of this ruling tonight?
Sure. Thanks, Jenna. Thanks for having me. It's a huge day for American consumers, for small businesses all throughout this country who were on the precipice of being absolutely devastated and harmed by these tariffs. And so we are celebrating this. We, like you, are still digesting it. But essentially, you're right. I mean, the Court of International Trade, in a very thoughtful decision, said that essentially all of the tariffs that Donald Trump engaged in under IEEPA, basically the April tariffs, are unlawful. And so they are enjoined. They are essentially enjoined as of tonight, as you and I are speaking. It looks like the Trump administration has made it clear they're going to try to appeal this decision, and they'll probably seek a stay. But for now, this is good news for the people of America.
Okay, so Democrats live in a different reality on a different planet, in a different universe, people. They claim that these tariffs are devastating American consumers, causing record prices and inflation. Now, my question is this, and this is just being fair. What has been more devastating up to this point? COVID, which triggered the record inflation from Joe Biden and that huge spending that occurred in the government, or these tariffs from President Trump that really has not gone into effect. If you think about it, we don't even know what it actually looks like because we're not even 6 months in. This just happened in April, people. So these people are already making decisions and speaking as if these tariffs have been in place for the last few years. It's ridiculous. And what's fascinating, besides the pardon power that President Trump possesses, the other authority that he has that really is unmatched unless Congress does something about it, it's tariffs. Take a listen.
Well, what's going to happen is first we're going to see what happens on appeal, and we're very confident in our success there because, after all, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans have died because of mostly Chinese fentanyl and Chinese fentanyl coming in from Mexico and Canada. And the idea that having more people die from fentanyl than died in the Vietnam War and that's not an emergency, that we need to use every power that we have to try to address is ludicrous to me. But the second thing is that the trade law is very complex. And this part of the trade law is the thing that was most accurately used, very precisely used by USTR Trade Representative Jamieson Geer, because this is the one that where we actually have the most authority for doing what we're exactly doing. But there are 3 or 4 other ways to do it, and we don't have to go into the numbers right now. I think everybody will go back to sleep, Maria. But the fact is that there are measures that we could take with different numbers that we could start right now. There are different approaches that would take a couple of months to put these in place, and using procedures that have been approved in the past or approved in the last administration. But we're not planning to pursue those right now because we're very, very confident that this ruling is incorrect.
So overall, from the left's perspective, they believe this is a huge win. It allows them to stop President Trump from destroying the economy, particularly hurting American consumers, because they believe tariffs is causing record inflation. Now, from the White House perspective, this is nothing new. They've been getting hit with injunctions since day one. Every time President Trump sneezes, a judge rules against him, okay? But what's more importantly, which is actually the reality here, is the White House, particularly President Trump, has different avenues to get this done. So even with this ruling that they have appealed, which everybody believes it's going to be reversed, and even if it isn't, they have alternative ways, and not one way, but at least 4 different ways to implement tariffs on these countries. So this is not the end, folks. And neither is your opportunity to capitalize on the value of Bitcoin Take a listen to this message from today's sponsor.
Now, I'm still new to crypto. You might be as well. But when I got in, which is when Trump dropped his meme coin, I actually made a solid return. But that's only because I used Crypto.com's platform. It's the platform I trust as a beginning trader. This app is insanely easy to use, and now it's my go-to for all things crypto. And right now, get this, they're giving away 1 Bitcoin, which is worth currently over $100,000. And it's simple to enter. Just sign up using the link in the description below, and every $50 that you trade, you get 1 free entry. So $150 in trades, that's 3 entries. Think about that. Winners will be announced on July 4th, hot dogs, beer, and a Bitcoin. What else could sound perfect during Independence Day?
Now, let's go to our next story, because this is another huge story from this morning. And that is Dan Bongino speaking out, not just about James Comey, but some new information about Jeffrey Epstein. I know. Take a listen.
Well, I'm never going to say we have all of it. And people ask me all the time, are these cases closed? And whether they're closed administratively is irrelevant. If new tips come in, we're absolutely going to follow them. And that's why I always put out, if you have additional information, please let us know. Those 2 cases obviously are of significant public interest. I'm just telling you what we see in the file. I just want to be crystal clear on this. I am not asking anyone to believe me. I'm telling you what's there and what isn't. Right. There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay, it was only 1 camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this, we are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him. Right. There's just nobody there. So I say to people all the time, if you have a tip, let us know. But there's no DNA, there's no audio, there's no fingerprints, there's no suspects, there's no accomplices, there's no tips, there is nothing. If you have it, I'm happy to see it. There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
Okay, so that is a newer update that we haven't heard, that there is a video. Now, the unfortunate part, as you heard him state, that the video does not show Jeffrey Epstein killing himself. So I guess that is a letdown. And of course, the bigger letdown overall is the high expectations that the Trump administration placed on this story. They didn't have to lead when Trump got elected. They did not have to lead with this whole rhetoric that we're going to release the Epstein files. We're going to expose it all. We're going to hold people accountable. They didn't need to say that, but they chose to say it. So quite frankly, I love Dan Bongino. I just don't love the FBI. And I don't trust anything that they say. It seems to me no one's ever going to be happy. So let's just stop talking about it, right? That's my reaction to this. Now, let's go to his other statement about James Comey, because, again, James Comey had some words for him. He doesn't even respect him as a FBI official, especially as the deputy director. He just calls him a podcaster, even though we know Dan Bongino was a Secret Service agent for former President Obama. But okay, fine. Here's what he said about James Comey. Take a look.
I got to tell you, of all the things that have surprised me in the close to now 3 months I've been here is the depravity of Jim Comey. This man is a disgrace to the badge, the FBI, and the country. What he's doing right now, one, going out and taking shots at Kash. Kash doesn't belong. Kash was the chief of staff at the Department of. Kash is a patriot. Kash has served in numerous high-level roles, taking personal shots while you're on the beach, implying a threat towards the president and blaming your wife about it. And let me just add about James Comey, Saint Comey, who walks around there moralizing to everyone how wonderful of a human being he is. What you said is absolutely accurate. We have wasted countless man hours now running out tips to our tip line about people putting 8647 because of Jim Comey, because he cannot control himself and his emotions. He is a child. He is a big child. And let me tell you one more thing. Jim Comey, who wants you to believe, Jim Comey taking a shot at the president. Oh, look at me, I'm such a victim. The president's going after me. He's making a ton of money on this book. The only person that got prosecuted was the president. Jim Comey, we're finding stuff even now. Wait till you read the stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, so that was Dan Bongino. Listen, nobody likes James Comey. I think we all can agree to that. And for multiple reasons, especially the way he went after President Trump. Now, he claims that he's a victim because the President Trump made comments about him. I mean, give me a break. Now, let's go to our next story. This is in regards to Harvard. And now a new poll from CNN that shows that America is actually on the side of President Trump here. Take a look.
Yeah, I think going into this, I think a lot of Americans thought that higher ed needed a nice kick in the rear end. What am I talking about here? Well, why don't we take a look at high confidence in higher education? You go back a decade ago, 57% of Americans had high confidence in higher education. Look at where we are now. That number has plummeted as of last year down to 36%. We're talking about a 36-point drop among Republicans specifically. Get this, 68% of Americans said that higher education was on the wrong track. So it's a question of whether or not people agree with Trump's tactics, but they definitely agree with him on the idea that there is a problem with higher ed overall.
So this is no secret. We've been discussing this over the past few days, given what's happened with Harvard. And the bottom line is this: anybody that knows, especially if you have children who is going to these universities, I'm sure by now you've heard of the complaints, not just anti-Semitism. Let's just talk about what they're learning, right? They're teaching kids all about this, white rage and DEI stuff, and, black people are oppressed and white people are the problem. I mean, I'm overgeneralizing here, but at its core, that's what's happening. And so there's not an opportunity for people to push back on those ideals because it's predominantly anti-conservative views that are happening on these universities, which is why I always say, you let me know the last conservative professor that you know, right? I don't think they exist, okay? Figuratively speaking. Now, here's MSDNC's side of things. Take a look.
I think, generally speaking, when you look at the attacks that the Trump administration has been waging on everything from law firms to universities, the strategy seems to be attack first and do as much as you can and worry about the courts later. So I'm not sure it's quite a strategy. I think they get ahead of themselves sometimes, and in granting Harvard 30 days to figure out what it does next, it's also giving the administration a little more time to figure out its strategy, because there doesn't seem to be a lot ahead of it other than use every lever that they can find within the government to punish institutions that they think stand in the way of autocracy. And certainly institutions like Harvard and other universities where they teach about diversity, where they teach about democracy, are places that seem threatening to tyrants. And that seems to be how the president is acting, like a tyrant. But the courts so far are providing a check against that. So let's hope that continues.
Okay, so the idea that President Trump is using every lever to his disposal to, enact his agenda, and part of that is rooting out anti-Semitism, so he's going after Harvard, is, I guess, a bad thing. I mean, that's exactly what Joe Biden did when he wanted to get student loans forgiven. But see, when Joe Biden does it, or Democrats, when they're in power, when they do it, nothing is being said. But when President Trump is doing it, it's all bad. And Democrats are continuing to make the mistake that lost them the election. They make everything about President Trump. They make everything about the man instead of making it about the overall purpose or mission and who they're fighting for. It's a classical mistake. Now, the other thing that she said that was interesting is what they're teaching at these universities, and it's good. We should be teaching diversity. I mean, according to her. See, they're even out of touch of what the true issue is. The true issue is that there's no competing thought. It's pure bias in what is being taught at these universities. Even Americans agree with it. Take a look.
Yeah. So, do colleges have a liberal bias? I think that's really the question here. And what we see in polling after polling after polling is that the plurality say yes. Overall, look at that. 45% of Americans overall agree with the idea that colleges have a liberal bias. Just 24% disagree with that idea. Look among Republicans. Hello, 67% of Republicans agree that colleges have a liberal bias. This is why Donald Trump is so emphatic and so wanting to take on this fight, because he knows that Republicans hate universities, hate the administrations, believe they have a liberal bias, and in fact, the plurality of Americans overall agree with the idea, agree with Donald Trump, that colleges are in fact a place where bias reigns.
Now, here is the actual nuanced perspective about everything that's happening, and it's my own personal opinion. The mission and the goal and the purpose of what President Trump is doing as it pertains to targeting Harvard University and other universities for that matter is spot on. But the tactics that they are deploying, I disagree with. I don't believe you should be revoking all student visas and then asking to vet every single person's social media account. If you are a true conservative, that means you don't agree with big government. That's exactly what that is. So I agree with the mission. I just disagree with the tactics. And what's interesting is it's not just me. I think a lot of conservatives out there are raising their eyebrows. And they did discuss that on Morning Joe this morning. Take a look.
There's this danger for Trump right now. It's really interesting. You know, we've been monitoring MAGA media very closely. And there's obviously still a ton of loyalty. But there's starting to be a break. We saw it last night over AI. You saw Steve Bannon, you saw Charlie Kirk and some others saying, hey, we agree with what Axios wrote, what Morning Joe talked about yesterday, that there could be this job apocalypse that the administration is not paying enough attention to. That's a little bit of a break. You've seen Ben Shapiro on his show say, whoa, all of these deals that seem to be helping out the Trump family and helping Trump, but aren't doing anything to help the working class, that could be really problematic for the Republican Party in 2026 and 2028. And so I think these fights that he's picking, well, they might feel good and they might satisfy some kind of itch that a part of the base has had, are starting to unnerve even parts of his base. And I would keep a close eye on that. I don't think MAGA is going to split from Trump, but there's real signs that there's a deep unease that this could hurt the party, all of this in totality running into 2026. And for Trump, God forbid, if he has Democrats running the House, it's going to be investigation, subpoena for 2 years. And he's giving them a lot to work with.
Now, I'm showing you guys that clip because I'm a firm believer in showing you what both sides are saying. Some of you guys may not even like what he had to say. That doesn't mean we don't support what President Trump is doing, but I believe in the access of the information and competing ideas. And here's the bottom line, folks. Not every single thing that this administration is doing is going to be the right thing, and it definitely won't be perfect. And when they do something wrong, we should call it out because we should not be the people that we are fighting against. That's the mistake Democrats made for many, many years. They became the racist, okay? All right? They became big government. They became the people who were canceling and censoring people, okay? So if they're doing something wrong, like the Doge cuts, we haven't seen that whatsoever. We haven't seen the Epstein files whatsoever. We should call it out every single time. Because if we don't, they're going to think, hey, it's not really a problem. And it is a problem. So let me know if you guys are on the same page with me about that. And let me know what you think about all the other stories in the comment section below, starting with these judges who blocked President Trump from implementing his tariffs. If they get their way, we would have to return up to $15 billion of tariff revenue. Secondly, what Dan Bongino had to say in regards to Jeffrey Epstein. There's a video, but it still doesn't show him killing himself. Okay. And then finally, this whole thing with Harvard and how American people, they know this is an issue, that the universities are an issue. They do not allow competing thoughts whatsoever. Just let me know what you guys think about all that in the comments section below. Now, yesterday, President Trump issued some pardons, and it had the media panicking. Okay, they were stunned by some of them. I'm not, and I'm sure you won't be either. And Kash Patel also had some words for James Comey. So if you missed out on both those stories, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.